All right, well, good morning. This is, isn't this fantastic, having this opportunity to get together? We're really fortunate this morning to have with us Jan Allegretti, who's a real animal lover and who's devoted her life to understanding more deeply the nutritional requirements, especially of our companion animals of dogs and cats. So I want to just say a little bit about Jan. She's the author of the Complete Holistic Dog Book, and she's also the co-author of a book called Listen to the Silence, which sounds like a wonderful book, actually. Both of them do. This presentation, as you know, is called Healthy and Fresh for Dogs and Cats, What Your Animal Family Really Wants for Dinner. And Jan is also essentially a consultant in holistic healthcare for animals. She writes a column called Beyond Body, Mind, and Spirit for In Defense of Animals e-newsletter. She's the co-founder of the Mendocino County animal advocacy organization called CARE, which is Compassion for Animals, Respect for the Earth. So my name is Dr. Will Tuttle. I'm really honored to introduce to you those of you who are here and those of you who are watching the streaming presentation, Jan Allegretti with Healthy and Fresh for Dogs and Cats. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Will. It's really a pleasure to have this chance to meet so many people who are doing such wonderful, valuable work, and certainly to meet Will. You know, I've seen the work that he's done over the years and really enjoyed it and admired it. And it's really a pleasure to have him here and so many people that the Living Light Institute brings in together to make something like this happen, and to draw in people like you who have wonderful ideas to share as well. You know, the teaching is so much of an exchange. It's never a one-way event. So I really value all the experience that each one of you brings into this as well. There's so many things to talk about when we look at the care of our animals. But to this weekend, we're here thinking about food and diet for ourselves. And all of you, I suspect, are here because you want to eat in a more healthy way. You want to change your eating habits, whether that's because for the purpose of your own physical health, whether that's because of the impact that it has on the environment, which it does, and whether it's because of the impact that it has on the animals, which it certainly does. And of course, all those things are improved when you eat the way that the Living Light Institute teaches us to eat. The interesting thing is that so often when we look at how those things happen for ourselves, so often people come and say, you know, it never really occurred to me that I could do the same kinds of things for my animals, whether it's diet or homeopathy, alternative medicine. We've sort of, I think a lot of us have been raised in the context of a culture where we're told that we need the experts to tell us what to do. We need the experts to put the right food in a bag for our animals so that they get the right nutrition. We need experts to tell us about what kind of healing modalities to use. Thank goodness we have experts to give us information, but then we all need to trust our own wisdom too and know that we have a lot of knowledge and apply that as well. So as we're here today, this weekend, to talk about healthy food for ourselves, it's good to take some time out to look at how we can apply a lot of those same principles to our animals and how we can help them to be more vibrant, more vital, have greater longevity, just like we want for ourselves. And also to allow them to have a less impact on the planet. And for those of us that haven't eaten meat in a long time, to not have to bring meat into the house if you don't want to do that for your animals. So what about those packaged foods? You know, as I said, I know I grew up thinking that the very best thing I could give my dog and my cat was packaged food that had the label on it, 100% nutritionally balanced, approved by a veterinarian, put together by experts. I was told that that was the best thing to give them. Table scraps were a big no-no. Don't give your dog food from the table. It's just not good for them. I don't think I've really heard why, except that it might make them sick, I was told. Again, it's labeled 100% nutritionally complete, so it must be okay, right? And there was that sense of disempowerment, is that this is what's in the bag is right for our dogs and cats. and I don't really know what's right for them. I don't know what they need, so I better not try to feed them myself. The other thing is that it's really easy. That actually, I think, was one of the biggest reasons that the packaged food business industry took off like it did. The Industrial Revolution came along, and we all got jobs, and we all got busy, and it was a lot easier to come home at night and rip open a bag and dump some in a bowl. It is easy, and it's a help. So what's wrong with that? It has all those benefits that we've talked about. What's really wrong with that? First of all, it's packaged. Packaged food is packaged. It's been, in order to be able to put it in a package and ship it off and put it on a shelf, it has to be cooked, it has to have preservatives of some kind, and it may sit on a shelf for who knows how long. It doesn't have the same kind of vital energy that fresh food does. It simply can't by nature of what it is. The quality of the ingredients in packaged food, the range can be enormous. There are some companies that are very conscientious that are making what can be considered a health food version of packaged food. Just like you can go into a store and buy organic food that's prepared with some consciousness for yourself. There are some animal foods that are prepared that way. But on the other end of the spectrum, there can be horrendous ingredients. Often it's the worst of the worst. It's the foods that are not suitable for the human palate. Can be the dead, down, diseased, and dying animals. Often the meat from those animals, it's what goes into pet food. And it has even been known to be the case where some companies use the rendered carcasses of companion animals from shelters in their pet food. So there's some things in there that are, the quality can be very, very poor. And of course, a lot of them contain artificial additives. In a lot of cases, those are for you more than they are for your animal. Because when you open that can or that box, the company knows that if it doesn't look appetizing, if it doesn't smell appetizing to you, you may not buy it again. Or if it doesn't, if your dog doesn't get really excited when you put that food down, you're not going to be as happy with it. So they put in flavor enhancers, food colorings, things to make it smell nice, all kinds of things. And of course the preservatives that it needs to have in order to stay on the shelf. Even the premium brands, a lot of times you feel that, well, if I don't buy the cheap stuff, if I buy something really good, then I've got a better chance of having a quality meal for my animal. And that's not necessarily the case. Even some of the most expensive brands of food have preservatives. Ethoxyquin is a preservative that has been, for a long time, was extremely popular with some of the brands that were considered premium brands. But those foods often, ethoxyquin has been associated with cancers and skin problems and liver problems and all kinds of things. So most have taken it out, not all of them. Some are still using it. The other thing is that even if the label says 100% nutritionally complete, that's kind of a misnomer. Excuse me. There really is no such thing. If you think about it, if we go around the room, my nutritional needs are different from yours, All of us have different requirements for what we need. More than that, what I need today, I'm here this weekend, I'm busy, I'm running back and forth, traveling, doing a lot of different kinds of things. My nutritional needs are probably going to be different from where they are when I'm sitting on my mountain, working on my computer, living a very leisurely, relaxed lifestyle. Sometimes. But needs change, and they're different from one individual to another. And it's the same for animals. Certainly my Great Dane, 125-pound Great Dane, doesn't have the same needs as your golden doodle, you know. So there is really no one right formula for all animals. The other thing is that it lacks variety. One of the things that we've been told is that you find one dog food that your dog likes and seems to do well on and feed it forever. Don't change it. He'll get sick. He'll get diarrhea. One food forever. You better get that formula right if that's all he's ever going to eat for the rest of his life. And you know, if there's a quality of life issue involved, it gets boring. But most importantly, your animal needs to be able to draw different foods, different nutrients from different foods. And that's not possible when you're feeding one packaged food all the time. So why is fresh food better? It's fresh. It has the vital energy that we love in our good, wholesome, fresh food that we cook for ourselves. And for all the reasons that you eat fresh food yourself, your animal derives exactly the same benefits from that quality of food. And not the least of those is the nutrition. You know that so many nutrients are lost when food is processed and packaged and sits on a shelf and cooked and all those things. So when you eat food that's fresh from your garden or freshly prepared in your kitchen, fresh from a wonderful organic store, it's just going to have more vitality and more nutrition. One of the biggest advantages of a fresh food diet is that you can feed an unlimited range of variety to your animals. You don't need to feed the same thing every day. You can provide different nutrients so that your animal has an opportunity to draw whatever it is that he needs from one day to the next to the next. And this is part of the reason why it's a lot safer to go off on your own and feed your own diet than you might expect, because as long as you're feeding a variety, you don't have to get the formula right today. You don't have to get the formula exactly right tomorrow. If you've changed the diet, if you feed a variety, if you watch your animal, get feedback, find out what works for him or her, then over the period of time, over the course of a week or a month, he'll be able to draw the different nutrients that he needs and get the maximum benefit from it, and stay much healthier in the long run. The other thing is that you can design the meals based on what your animal needs. One of your greatest assets is your ability to observe and get feedback from him or her and see how she's feeling. When she's more stressed, you can alter the diet for that. If her energy seems too high, you can make changes. If she ages, her needs are going to change. And so that you have the opportunity to be as flexible as your dog or cat needs you to be, to adjust her diet to meet the needs, whatever is going on.
How would you adjust to age?
Well, it depends. Sometimes quality of protein needs to change. Some animals need a little bit less protein as they age. Other animals have a little trouble absorbing their nutrition, so they need more dense nutrients. Some animals tend to gain weight more as they age, so you need to provide foods that maybe have a lower calorie content but still give them the energy. So there are a lot of things you can do. You can start to add supplements. You can take away supplements if they don't. Pardon me?
I have 3 cats.
Uh-huh.
I've been giving them a little bit of E3 Alive, and they just
I bet. Absolutely. Yeah. It's great. And the thing is that with all these benefits, it doesn't have to be hard. So often I hear, I don't have time to cook for myself. I don't have time to prepare my own meals. It's all I can do to keep up with that and my family and my job and everything. I can't possibly prepare homemade food for my animals as well. It really can be very, very easy. Doesn't have to be complicated at all. And we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do to make that really easy. But it is so important because of all these factors. I've come to the conclusion, I really believe that the single most important thing, first of all, you have to provide a safe and loving home for your animal. That's essential. That's number one. Once that's in place, the single most important thing you can do is a healthy diet. Annual vet exams are good, nice. A lot of people do that. A lot of people don't. Whatever other care you do, the diet is critical. The medicine is an after-the-fact thing. It's just like for you. Your diet is so essential to everything. I have found over the course of quite a number of years of working with animals with a variety of different problems, people call me with all kinds of things, with emotional problems, digestive problems, lameness problems, skin problems, all kinds of things. I have found, usually what I do consulting individually and I teach classes. And generally when someone calls me for a private consultation, we'll do an overall intake where I'll get the case history, I'll talk about medical history, I'll talk about what particular problems are going on now, and get a sense for what the issues are and make some general basic recommendations. First of that is always to look at the diet. What are you eating and how can we improve that? And then usually we'll do, because I do a lot of work with homeopathy, I usually schedule a second appointment where we can do an intake particularly about the information I need to choose a homeopathic remedy. And some of you are familiar with homeopathy. You may know that it can take a half hour, 40 minutes to go through all the different traits and characteristics and symptoms and lifestyle issues that contribute to helping me know which homeopathic remedy. Well, that takes a little time. So usually we talk about the basics, diet, maybe some herbs to add, making sure all the toxins are out of the environment. But the diet is the key. And I have found that about 80% of the time, by the time we get around to having that second appointment for the homeopathy intake, problems are about 80% better on an average. You know, sometimes they're gone. Sometimes the lameness is gone. Sometimes the skin has radically cleared up. Sometimes the animal is calmer, more peaceful, less separation anxiety. But overall, the vast majority of the problems are diminished drastically when just the diet is changed. Now, if somebody is feeding a really, really good quality, a relatively good quality healthcare type packaged food, such as, if we can use that phrase, the difference will be less dramatic than if somebody is feeding to not, let's say, a really low-cost grocery store brand. Then the difference is going to be a lot more dramatic. But in general, the improvements across the board can be significant just from changing the diet alone. And number one, there's a vitality and a sense of energy and peace and just vibrant good health that you see in animals that are eating a really, really high-quality diet. Everything is, I'm just noticing everything is squished. Savannah didn't have a squished face like this. This is Savannah. She is a really, really good case in point for the quality, the value of feeding this way. I met Savannah at the shelter, the county shelter in Ukiah. She was 5 years old. She had been, I was able to trace her history. She had been surrendered by the person, her family, who had previously tried to just leave her in the streets in Ukiah. They thought that if they turned her loose that somebody might pick her up. Well, nobody did. That went on for a couple of weeks. Nobody picked her up. She had spent the first 2.5 years of her life as a breeder in a puppy mill. Great Dane Rescue got her out of there, adopted her to a family, and she was there for 3 years, and these are the people that eventually left her in the street and then left her at the pound. She was in pretty rough shape. She was really, really skinny. She had ear infections. She was terribly depressed, and she just was not a very happy girl. And she was 5 years old. You know, Great Danes the thinking is that Great Danes don't have a really long lifespan. And I thought, well, if I can get one really good year with her, then that would be wonderful. I changed her diet, of course, right away. She blossomed. Her coat got more lustrous and softer. Energy was good. Her frame of mind improved. I was just telling somebody here that she had a diagnosis of hemangiosarcoma when she was 11 years old, which is often fatal within about, it can be, once the symptoms show up, it can be pretty rapid progression. She seemed to beat that. And she ended up living to 2 weeks past her 13th birthday. So we had not one but 7 wonderful years together. And I really believe that the diet was a big part of it. So what goes into this diet? If we're going to free ourselves from the packaged food, what do I feed? Most important ingredient is variety. Single most important thing. Change it up. Doesn't have to be different every day, but if you can change it every few days, at least every week, that's a really good thing. We're going to talk about some basic components. You just want to rotate them around. Have some basic foods that you're going to rely on and rotate through those. Throw in something different when you can. Variety. Change it up. The 4 basic components that you want to put in are protein, carbohydrate, vegetables and fruits, and a source of fats, fatty acids. A lot like what you eat yourself, isn't it? You change up your protein source. If you're going to feed meat, at least make it a different kind of meat from time to time. You don't need to feed meat. They do beautifully on tofu, lentils, nut butters. Same kinds of protein sources that you would use for yourself. Not all, but many animals need more protein than you might need for yourself. So you might make some of those higher, more protein-dense foods a larger component of their diet. But carbohydrate sources, huge range. Grains. I know there is a lot of concern about allergies to grains. Some animals have allergies. Many, many, many do not. See what works for your animals.
So are you cooked carbohydrate or sprouted?
Sprouted is great. I use raw rolled grains, like rolled oats, rolled barley, quinoa, kamut, spelt. You can use potatoes. Of course, those need to be cooked. Squash. Yeah, just a variety of things. Rice, of course, would need to be cooked. Brown rice. Fruits, don't overlook fruits. The fruits are as good for them as they are for us. Really important part of the program. And fats. I do need fatty acids. And this can come from canola oil, flaxseed oil, borage. A lot of people use fish oils. You don't need to. Olive oil. If you do feed meat, you need to add calcium to the diet. If you don't feed meat, you're feeding you have plenty of calcium in the food sources that you're using. You don't need it. But if you are feeding meat, the meat has a lot of their needs aren't just related to the amount of calcium they get. It also has to do with the balance of calcium and phosphorus. And meat adds a lot of phosphorus to their diet, so you need to balance that with calcium. So if you are feeding meat, you need to add that. If you don't feed meat, you don't need to add calcium. They're getting what they need. I also like to add what I call nutrition boosters. And these are just things that give sort of an extra punch of nutrients that are outside the basic components. Things like probiotics is a really valuable thing to add in. Certainly it helps with digestion and immune support. Wheat germs, spirulina or blue-green algae, seaweed, various things like that. And those are things that you can rotate through now and then. It's a great way to sort of monitor how your animal is feeding, what their needs are, and change it up. Garlic and nutritional yeast are wonderful for flea and tick season because they really do help deter those. They help with parasites. Did you have a question?
A quick question. For basic components, what ratio would you?
That's in the next slide. We're going to get that. Let me just back up. A vitamin mineral supplement is good insurance. If you're feeding really good quality organic food, you probably don't need a vitamin mineral supplement, but it's nice insurance. And of course, feed organic whenever you can. For the same reasons you eat organic, to keep those pesticides out and keep the food as vital as possible. Proportions. Somebody asked about what proportions to feed. Again, this is the place where you need to observe your animal and see what their needs are. But these are some good ranges that you can work with. 30 to 60% of the meal can be a protein source. 30 to 60% can be a carbohydrate source. I have found that some animals that are really, really high energy, the ones that just can't relax. There's a difference between feeling great and I just want to play. And I gotta run, I can't sit still. Okay? Some of those dogs in particular, and cats too, sometimes backing off on the protein amounts can really help calm them down significantly. But then if you see signs of weakness or lethargy or poor quote quality, then you might not be giving enough protein. Vegetables, at least 10 to 30% of the meal. Can't really overdo the spinach, They love the greens, broccoli. I used to have a Doberman who loved the stalks from the broccoli. I'd cut off the florets and we'd have those with our meals. And then as a treat, I'd save the stalk, and as a treat, she'd chew on that instead of bones and things. It's a different thing. The question was, she said that she gives her dog celery stalks, and he'll nibble on a little bit, but he loses interest pretty fast. It's an individual thing. Some dogs, the same Doberman used to steal. I was spending a lot of time around horses then, and people would bring bags of carrots for their horses. She'd steal the carrots and go eat them. It depends. Some love them, and some are not as interested. But I have found that most animals really, really enjoy vegetables with their meals and fruits with their meals. So certainly get them into those. I think it has to do with being accustomed to it. I think maybe if you start them younger, they're going to be a little bit more likely to really enjoy it. I think I'm getting short on time here, so I'm going to try to be brief. But ask questions if you have them. Again, fats, a teaspoon to a tablespoon. A lot of the nutrients that you add are going to be, is that 10? A lot of the things that you add, a good basic rule of thumb is to use amounts that are proportionate to what you might use in terms of body weight. If you have a 50-pound dog, maybe give him a third of what you would have. Particularly with the nutrition boosters, that's one way to do it. So just adjust it proportionally to body weight. There are a few foods to avoid. The vast majority of things that you eat are fine for your dogs and cats. There are a few that are not. Grapes and raisins are not. These raisins, of course, are dried grapes. Onions, definitely not good for cats. In small amounts, they're not going to hurt your dog. But in large amounts, they can cause a hemolytic anemia, which is very serious. And herbs in general, if you're adding herbs to the diet, there are some herbs act differently in different species. Most of the ones that we take are okay for your dog. There are a few exceptions to that. There are quite a few exceptions with cats. So before you give your cats herbs, check to make sure that it's an herb that's going to be all right for them. What about raw foods for animals? Many of the ingredients that we've talked about can be fed raw. We talked about the raw rolled grains that work fine. Certainly greens, most vegetables can be fed raw. Cruciferous vegetables, there are some benefits available when they're slightly steamed that are not available when they're raw. And, of course, there are some that are available raw that are not when they're steamed. So it's good to feed sometimes raw, sometimes steamed. Nut butters are great. Fruits, sprouts, lots of things that can go raw. But not everything. The reality is that dogs and cats have a much, much shorter digestive tract than we do. So there are going to be some things that they don't digest as well. Watch their stool. Particularly when you first start feeding a fresh food diet, you may see some of these vegetables pass on through. And that's simply because if they're not used to it, they don't have the enzymes and the bacteria that they need to digest them. In time, that'll get better. Because they'll begin to produce those. But at the beginning, you can puree the foods. That helps with digestion. You can also add some enzymes.
How would you introduce them or change them over from packaged to this? Just a little bit at a time?
That's a judgment call. I actually have another slide on that, too. You're great. You're on track with me here. No, but that's good. The transition can be, my feeling is get the bad food out as quick as you possibly can. One more day on food that is really not good for them is one day longer than I'd like to see it happen. And most animals, you'll be amazed how well they adapt to this kind of a diet. Certainly start with more bland, easy to digest foods. And keep it a little simpler, maybe tofu instead of sprouted lentils or something. That's going to be easier to digest. But do it as quickly as you can. If you see diarrhea, back off. If they seem to be having trouble digesting, back off and do it gradually. If you're just not comfortable, do it gradually. But I think you'd be surprised that most of them adapt really a lot faster than you'd expect. The classic thing people think about with raw foods diet for dogs and cats is the bones and raw food, what is it, bones and raw, I always forget what the F is for. It's the raw meat diet that a lot of people are feeding animals. Number one, we don't need to be feeding them meat because, and with the impact that it has on the environment and the animals and our energy, our spiritual nature, it's not necessary. If you feel you want to feed that to them, there are concerns. Animals are not immune to spirulina and E. coli infections. The common thinking is that they are, but they are not, particularly animals that have compromised immune systems, whether because they are older or suffering stress or illness. There is some risk. And there is more and more risk of bone splinters. We used to think that it was only cooked bones that caused splinters and that if you fed them raw, it was okay. Since more and more people are feeding raw bones, vets are seeing more and more cases of animals with bone splinters in their, in their system. So that's a concern.
So it's okay, like I want to do this with my cat. Saying cats are carnivores, do not give your cats raw
Raw food or vegetarian food?
Food besides, anything besides animal food.
Animals definitely need supplementation, or cats definitely need supplementation if they are not getting getting meat. Dogs don't necessarily. It's a good idea. We're going to get into a lot more detail about the vegan diet tomorrow. If they're eating vegetarian, you're pretty much okay. But cats really should get supplemented if they're not getting meat. There's a wonderful company called Harbingers of a New Age that makes supplements for vegan dogs and cats. And I really encourage you to look into those. And for sure, feed that if you're feeding a cat without meat. If you're feeding a vegan dog, it's a good idea. It's important. It's also important, very important. Harbingers of a New Age. The foods are called Veggie Dog and Veggie Cat, and you can find them at veggepet.com. It's VEGEPET.com. Again, make it easy on yourself. Buy and serve the foods yourself. You don't need a separate shopping list. You don't need separate cooking plan strategy. Buy and cook the same foods that you eat yourselves. That's the easiest way to do it. You can share the same foods. Share your own meals. If you're in a hurry, you're rushed one night, just share the pot. Some for me, some for you, some for your dog and cat. You can prepare some basic components. Like one way to do it is to make your carbohydrate and your protein source and put that up in little packages and freeze it, and then pull it out and add some fresh vegetables when you serve it. And it really makes it pretty easy. Keep some supplies on hand for when you're just really in a hurry. I have some quick and easy meals that I can put together in 2 minutes. Little peanut butter on some really good whole grain bread. Put it in a bowl with a little soy yogurt and cut up an apple, and it's quick and easy. Eggs and toast. If you're feeding eggs, cage-free, of course. Really, really cage-free, not vegetarian hens, because if they're vegetarian, they're not out pecking around in the grass. With a little bit of soy milk or rice milk in a dish, and there you go. California cuisine, avocados, not avocados, tofu. The juice from the tofu to soften up some rolled oats and some sprouts and spirulina. It's quick and easy. And my dish is your dish. Again, just share your meals. That's the quickest meal at all for your animals. Making the transition, talk to your vet. It's a good idea to check in, make sure everything is okay with him, although be aware that many, many, many vets are not trained in feeding a fresh food diet, and they will try to steer you towards what's packaged and what is specified nutritionally complete. Puree the grains, and if you're feeding grains and beans, puree the larger ones. Some smaller, softer ones like lentils cook up easily and are digested easily. Things like garbanzo beans, not so much. So if you want to puree them, overcook them a little bit if you're cooking them, and just to help with the digestion, especially early on. Get the unhealthy foods out as quickly as you can. And if you're uneasy about it, do it gradually and just watch. Your animal will tell you how they're feeding. You're gonna see the signs. If their energy is a little too low or too high, try adjusting the protein and carbohydrate ratios. If their coat looks a little dull, try adding a little more oil. Try a different fat source. Also take a look at the protein levels. If the digestion is poor, try some of the things we talked about, add enzymes or probiotics, cook or puree the raw foods, and you'll be less likely to see them passing through the stool. But there's a really good chance you're just going to see a lot more energy. You're going to see them calmer, more relaxed. The coat's going to be gorgeous, and the skin is going to be not so flaky and dry. They're going to feel great. And if that's what's going on, carry on. You're doing great.